I thought it was time to make myself a pair of pants to work out in that weren't skin tight. So I made myself some Silma Joggers. I'm Maddie with Maddie Sews, and welcome back. And a special welcome to all of the recent new subscribers who found me. Over here, I like to share with you all the things that I've made. I review patterns, I show you my hauls, both patterns and fabric, and I also do tutorials to show you how to make different things. And if that sounds like something that's up your alley, then I'm so happy that you're here. This pattern is actually described as being a loose fit pant or short with an elasticated waist and a drawstring through that waist. It also calls for a knit that has a 25% horizontal stretch to it, and it uses 1/4 inch seam allowances. If you have a serger, this pattern comes together so quickly. With a 1/4 inch seam allowance. It's just a snap. You can also still make this on your sewing machine. That's actually what I did because my poor serger, my poor baby's in the hospital and I'm waiting on a diagnosis. So I'm going to be without it for a couple of weeks here. And well, yeah, that's what prompted me to actually make these pants on my sewing machine. And it's really not a problem because it is made with that knit fabric and knits tend not to fray. So I didn't have any issues with the fraying or anything like that you would with a woven. I didn't bother finishing the seam allowances on this because of that. Now let's talk about sizing here. So this pattern runs from an extra small to an extra extra large, which is a waist size of 25 inches all the way up to 39 inches, and then the hip measurements of 35 inches going up to 49 inches. For me, I decided to go with the extra extra large, which corresponded to my hip measurement. My hip measurements falls right at that 49 inch. So I decided I wanted to go that route and I didn't want to mess around with blending it into a smaller waist. My waist measures in at a 35 right now. I felt like I was going to be okay making up the extra extra large and just cinching in that waistband a little more. When I'm not certain how an actual pattern's going to fit me, especially pants, I like to make a short version of it so that way I can check the fit, see how it's going, make any adjustments without having used too much fabric, and then go in with a full pant final product. That's what I did with this one. I used some extra camouflage fabric that I had already in my stash. I picked this fabric up from Joann Fabrics, and I actually made a Darla dress out of it where I put gold studs down the sleeves. I'll link to that up above for you to check it out in case you're interested. But I really do like this. It's a cotton knit. It has a decent amount of stretch and recovery. The recovery on this fabric actually is pretty decent. So, I mean, I would recommend it for something like this, especially if you're looking for a bit more of a lightweight pants. I felt like it works out really nicely. I didn't have to make any adjustments to the rise on these pants in either the front or the back. That seemed to work out nicely. And I felt like the loose fit indeed was a loose fit on me, which is really nice because I tend to carry a lot of my weight in my hips and thighs. And so a lot of times when people say something's a loose fit, it's still tight on my thighs. So I really did appreciate that when it came to this pattern. The one thing that kind of caught me a little off guard was that I think in the instructions, when it lists all the notions, it calls for 1.25 inch elastic. And so that's what I used for my shorts. But then I saw later on it had mentioned 1.5 inch elastic. So keep in mind that if you're making this pattern, you're going to want to use the larger elastic. This 1.25 inch elastic, it was just really too small. And what ended up happening was because this pattern doesn't call for any top stitching on that elastic, the waistband was shifting behind my elastic. I just went ahead and I pushed that elastic down as far as I could, and then I top stitched over that one, and then I put in my drawstring. And you see, I ended up with a bit of like a paper bag waist effect, which was really unintended. It's okay, you all. I mean, that's why I made the shorts version, so that way I can work all of this stuff out before I actually went in and did the pants version. In the pants, I did sew that on differently, so that way it kind of gobbled up the rest of that width and my elastic wasn't floating around inside the waistband. There are pockets on this pattern, and what I like about these pockets is that they are super roomy. I mean, you can get your entire hand in there, a phone. Ah! 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 Who doesn't love a really big pocket? And then before I actually hem these, I did want to check out the actual length of the shorts. And I felt like for me, they were just a little too short. So I didn't bother hemming it. I think it calls for a 1/2 inch hem allowance there. I just left it raw. I'm not worried if this curls, if it stretches out. None of that really bothers me because they are meant to be more casual for me. By the way, I did pick up a whole pack of like different colored drawstrings and stuff like this on Amazon. You can see. If I can find it, I'll definitely link to it below, but I remember when I was looking, there were lots of different options. So if you're wondering where you can find some decent looking drawstrings, check there for sure. The one thing that really kind of bothers me about shorts is that when it comes to these like looser fitting, shorter type of shorts on me, my thighs just gobble them up. I mean, I'm walking and my thighs get hungry or something and like, gimme, 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 gimme. You know, like before you know it, my thighs are exposed and my short legs have disappeared. I know some of you guys can feel me on this one. It's actually one of the reasons why I wear a lot of Bermuda shorts and, you know, like more slim fit type of woven shorts in summer because, yeah, I mean, the thighs are hungry. Okay, so let's talk about my pants now. So if these look familiar, it's actually because I made my husband a pair of True Bias Hudson pants, the men's version. I'll link to it above over here. But I was so jealous of his joggers. And I mean, they just look so comfortable. And when I'm strength training or even if I'm on the bike, sometimes I just don't want something that's super tight. So I was excited to be able to make myself a pair that looked similar to his, but are mine. This fabric was a double knit that I picked up from Fabric Mart online. And I had a good amount of it. And it's actually gray on one side and blue on the other. And I believe this is one of their jacquard knits. It was like a double jacquard knit, I believe. Having a fabric that has two different sides like this is so nice to be able just to color block and not have to think twice about it. So I did have the blue pockets, the gray pants, blue cuffs, and then I did the blue waistband. I also added in the blue drawstrings here. The one thing on the fit that I would change is actually the cuff part. This cuff is way too wide for my ankles. So what ends up happening is this pant cuff falls below my actual foot if I'm like wearing, you know, small profile shoes or even just like socks. This will actually slip underneath my foot. Because of that, the next time I make this pattern, I would remove 1.5 to 2 inches off of this cuff so that way it doesn't fall under my heel as I'm walking without any shoes on. I did take a different approach to this waistband than I did with this one. With this one, you can see that I sewed it on with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, And then I top stitched that seam allowance down right underneath the waistband. For this one, I decided that I didn't want that raw waistband kind of like hanging out there. So what I did was I sewed on the front part, leaving it totally open. And then I flipped it over, flipped that seam allowance in, and I sewed the seam allowance down so that way there weren't any raw edges here. You see that? I just feel like it looks a little nicer when you're making it up on a sewing machine that way. And because the waistband was a little too large on my camouflage shorts, I decided to take a larger seam allowance when I was attaching it to the actual main part of my pants, so that way it would take up some of that. Now, as a result, I feel like the holes are a little too short. So in the next version, I would still take that larger seam allowance, but I would raise these buttonholes that I put in here for the drawstring to come out, so that way they're not so close to the bottom here, so that they land more in the middle. Now, one thing that I do wish this pattern had was top stitching on the waistband. And the reason for that is that with the 1.5 inch elastic that I used for this one, my elastic still wants to fold over. You can see here how it's like folding over. And that drives me a little nuts. It would have been nice to have had some top stitching on the waistband to keep that elastic in place. Not only that, but I do think that this cord shifts around quite a bit as well. And so having the 2 rows of stitching would have provided a channel for the cord to go in and stay in. One of my New Year's resolutions was actually to sew more athletic wear. And so I'm really happy to have this pair because, well, it's really nice to have something that's not tight like leggings, right? I mean, this is like, it was such a nice change. So I could definitely see more joggers in my future. If sewing athletic wear is something that you're interested in, you might want to check out this video over here where I talk about some of the other leggings that I've made. And until next time, I sincerely hope that you find joy and have a wonderful day.